So I just want to tell you, we've got a large research program in the British Museum. We have 80 Egyptian mummies as well as 50 Sudanese mummies in the collection, and we've got a big program of research to better understand the evolution of mummification over time. A lot of the academic publications tend to refer to the same case studies, repeating the same results. And really what we're trying to capture is how the process evolved over time, how it may have varied by region and by period, and also better understand the significance of transforming the body and giving it the attributes of God. And our approach is been using, we're trying to push the science as much as possible. And what we're doing is using a dual energy CT scanner. So a dual energy CT scanner has two energies. So it has two X-ray machines going around the body instead of one. And that allows us to have one at lower wavelength setting, which allows us to capture the more delicate tissues and textiles equally as well as the denser elements, which we use a high wavelength setting to capture, such as the amulets, the objects placed by the embalmers, as well as the skeleton. And that really allows us to generate thousands of slices. So somebody my height is about 8,000 slices. And if we actually shared those slices with the public, I think they'd be very confused. So what we're doing is we're using very powerful volume rendering software, which is exceedingly accurate, more accurate than the software in the machines themselves, mostly used in engineering today, to actually transform the raw data, the DICOM data, into 3D models that the public can engage with and connect. And a lot of the work we're doing, and actually we outsource this work, we work with a colleague, which I think our colleagues at the museum also use, Benjamin Moreno, who's fantastic at identifying the different layers so that we can ask a computer to virtually unwrap these individuals. And we're doing it manually, not automated, so that we can be as close to the truth as science allows us to get, so that when we do remove the bandages, there isn't any bandage left, and we are really revealing the skin of the individual, because of course we're applying fake colors, which are very useful to hide any errors. And then all this really started, I started the British Museum in 2009, and I realized that we had a pre-dynastic mummy, so a mummy that was naturally preserved from the pre-dynastic period, so before Egypt was unified by the first pharaoh, that was on display, and there was very little information about Gebelein man. So we CT scanned him in 2012, and we had a 6 months display. Just checking I'm on the right slide. 6 months display, because the museum was very nervous about adding technology in the gallery and for me to talk a lot of science, really. And I'll talk some of the findings. And I think some of the element that's missed in a lot of the talks today, especially in the museum context, is basically why we're doing what we're doing and whether it's beneficial to our audiences. And I think that's a really important element. So in 2012, I was allowed to have this installation of this virtual autopsy table, which is basically a touchscreen interface that allowed the visitor to explore the mummified remain of this pre-dynastic mummy. And we monitored the gallery before the installation, so we had we have a whole department dedicated to this called our interpretation department. So they interviewed, they observed 200 people. So you might be observed if you enter the British Museum. It's not Big Brother. It's honestly for your benefit. And we track people, so we actually look where they stop, how long they stop, but also we interview. And the key findings was before the installation of virtual autopsy table, we actually had a dwell time of 2 minutes. You might think it's short, but a lot of people actually walking through to another gallery, mostly members of staff running to another meeting. So that brings the dwell time, the time people spend in the gallery, down. And people also made 2 stops on average. But Gebelein man has always been very, very busy. You can see here that 50% of the visitors in that gallery stop to look at his remains. So we do these heat maps as well. Circled in number 15 is Gebelein man. You can see here is the most popular display in that gallery, the pre-dynastic gallery, or the early Egypt gallery, as we call it. And my concern, you'll see throughout, is that I was very concerned that people although he looks very human, there was no information about him as a person. And I really wanted to remind the visitor, this is a person who once lived, and via the CT scan, we can find information that actually brings back his humanity. So it's not surprising that actually, because of the limited text that mostly focus on funerary practices rather than on him, people only spend 66 seconds looking at Gabelin man. We also look at holding power, and reflects that holding the 66 seconds is basically how long people are stopping on a case. So number 15, again the highest, but not particularly long. And after the installation of the virtual autopsy table, again, greater numbers of interviews, because we really wanted to get the sense of whether we are benefiting the visitor and the displays. The dwell time had increased by a whole minute, so that's great. The walkthrough is the same because the same curators are walking through to their meetings. But what's interesting is that people stopped in 3 areas. So even though we changed two spots in the gallery, actually had an impact on the whole gallery. And you can see here 83%, so that's gone up, of people are stopping to look at Gabelin man. Also 59% are looking at the virtual autopsy table, and 20% actually looking at the surrounding cases. So by adding this element, it's actually affected cases which are not directly relevant to Gabelin man. So it was a surprise finding. He's become even more attractive. You can see here in terms of the percentage of people stopping over, but also at the bottom left in yellow, the screen of the virtual autopsy table is also very attractive. And his attracting power after 5,500 years has gone up by 24%, which is a great, for us, a great result. And the holding power has gone up as well. So the key findings is that 84% of autopsy display users looked at Gabelin man, which is key, but I think the most key finding is that a lot of people went back and looked at his remains after using the virtual autopsy table. And I think if we didn't have that result, we wouldn't have made it a permanent display, because really we want technology to benefit and enhance the visitor experience and not detract from the collection. And what's amazing is that the table is in use 95% of the time. So this really spurred us on to actually develop a whole program. And also in terms of via the interviews, we determined what people found out. And for example, most people found out that he'd been stabbed in the back, and actually he's a young man when he died. So for 200 years, we had a murder victim on display without knowing it. So if you want to find out more, especially about the mathematics used, so the public has access to the full CT scan data, and we do rendering in real time. So we used a Swedish company that does very complicated live rendering, but also we put all the public research in that paper. So if you want to find out more, do so. And we're actually going to change the virtual autopsy table, because we found, since in 2018, René Friedman and myself published some new findings, again revealing the invisible, that actually using infrared imaging, that Gabelin man has tattoos on his arms. They appear as a black smudge, but with infrared they appear quite clearly. So we really want to change the data available to the public to integrate the scans. And both his tattoos are horned animals, a Barbary sheep. It's an example from the pre-dynastic period, and a bull. Both are commonly used in the pre-dynastic period as images of linked to strength. And later on, the bull becomes associated with the pharaoh. We also have other Gabelin mummies in our store. A Gabelin woman also has tattoos, which again reflect imagery found in the pre-dynastic period, including these S's or Z's, which none of my Egyptologist colleagues have given me a convincing explanation of what they mean. But the crooked stave held by the person here appears to be something that identifies a person of high status. So these are some of the oldest tattoos known in the world. If you want to find out more, do have a look. They overlap with Otzi the Iceman, who has the oldest tattoos in the world, the radiocarbon dating. So our 2 Gabelin mummies are the top 2, and the third one down is Otzi. We were hoping ours would be slightly earlier, so we'd have the earliest tattoos in the world, but you can't win all the battles. So this really inspired us to integrate this approach into exhibitions, and eventually we'd like to do like the Musée Egyptio to integrate it in our galleries. But initially, John Taylor did an exhibition, A Mummy the Inside Story, and since then we did one at the British Museum, Ancient Knives, New Discoveries in 2014 and 15. And I know there were some questions about displaying human remains, and 99% of the visitor feedback on that exhibition was in support of us displaying human remains. And since then, we've had touring exhibitions, and the touring exhibitions is allowing us to push the science and the way we communicate science with different audiences around the world. And we're getting all this feedback. And when we redo our galleries, which will be happening over the next decade, we will be able to integrate these findings. I'll just show you a few examples. We've got large collections, but mostly from the 22nd, 25th, and 26th dynasty, as well as the Greek and Roman period mummies. And I'll just show you some of the CT scan visualizations that we use in the galleries to communicate these findings. As I said, the raw data is very useful for research. You can see here that her brain has been removed and the textile has been inserted, but actually using CT scan visualization really allows us to communicate this more effectively with the public. And you can see here that we've also started integrating surface scanning, so merging the two data sets, allowing surface scans and CT scans to be integrated. And in her particular case, we use information to explore mummification. We highlight different objects placed by the embalmers on top of her body. And we use motion in motion to actually highlight some of these objects, such as this incision plate, but also some of the wonderful winged figures placed on her body. I'll just let one more reveal. And these visualizations are about a minute and a half. I'm not going to show the whole length, but it's just to give you a flavor. And the dual energy is making a big difference. For example, the incision plate here, with single energy, we wouldn't have picked up the fact that it has an eye of Horus. You can see it quite clearly, but actually we wouldn't have picked up there's actually two incision plates, and the second incision plate also has an eye of Horus. So really, this dual energy is really improving what we're able to see. You can see here an example from our own collection of an incision plate. But also you can see this winged scarab on the feet. We're able to 3D print. And in terms of working with children, as well as adults, it's great because we have replicas of those objects. For me, that's the most mind-blowing aspect, is that being able to hold an exact replica of these objects without having ever unwrapped these individuals. And the British Museum, we're very lucky, we've never unwrapped a mummy for at least 200 years. So the mummies are in the state they arrived. But as I said, I think a big part is to remind a visitor that these are people who have been mummified, not simply mummies. And we try and share some of the insights we have in terms of their state of health, for example, as well as the ages at which they died. And you can see here that we'll be zooming in on the femoral artery, and that Talmud suffered from diseases we think are very modern, but actually go back far in time. She had atherosclerosis, so that basically the fat deposits in her arteries have calcified, and she would have been at risk of a heart attack or a stroke. And this is the #1 killer in the world today, but as you can see, it goes back far in time. And we discovered so much atherosclerosis that actually triggered a new program of research where we're actually focusing on cardiovascular disease. And this is another example from the third intermediate period. And just to highlight how much the science and technology has evolved, and every time we're getting a new layer of information, from the old X-rays in '68 to the old CT scans in 2004 that John Taylor used for Mummy the Inside Story, more recent CT scans in 2012, and the latest generation in 2020. And every time we're seeing more details, we're revealing more amulets. And some of the things, for example, that we discovered originally in Mummy the Inside Story, they talked about one dental abscess. We actually have 18. And the bowl, the unusual bowl that was being placed on top of his head, which nobody has a good explanation for, and it originally was thought to be stuck on as an accident of the embalming. You can see actually it's been carefully placed by the embalmers within layers of bandages. So it's been deliberately placed. And of course, we're looking at the evolution of mummification. You can see the mouth here has been filled with resin, the throat has been packed with textiles, which is typical of the third intermediate period, where they're trying to preserve the features of these individuals. So as the body dries, it regains some of the three-dimensionality. As I said, the CT scan, the latest CT scans has revealed a lot of dental disease that wasn't identified in the top right, such as this tooth decay that's penetrated the tooth and actually affected the sinuses. But also the other two images highlight calcifications in the arteries linked to cardiovascular disease. And as I just said, 18 dental abscesses, not just one. Well, actually, there could be granuloma or cysts, but I won't go into technicalities at this stage. And that's because his teeth are very worn, exposing the pulp chamber and allowing bacteria to enter the pulp chamber, creating very large infections. And the bone at the tip of the roots has moved away. You can see these circular lesions where the infection is located. And we're using different combinations now and new approaches. We're mixing the original data with the three-dimensional modeling here, because the original data gives, as we've just done here, greater contrast, allowing us to communicate this more effectively with the public. And just a few more slides. As I said, we're also using three-dimensional. It's a very large file, it's struggling. Surface scans, so that we can actually place the mummy inside this niche of coffins. Something that, from a conservation point of view, we can't do. And combining the CT scans with this surface imagery, providing context for the mummified remains. You can see here also the bead net itself is being added via the surface scan. And then we go on exploring mummification, cutting through the body. So in this particular period, 25th dynasty, you can see the features are less clear because the body has been covered by a greater amount of resin. And in this particular period, the organs tend to be removed. The chest has been packed by this granular material. The organs have been dried separately and then placed on top of the legs. And as an added variation, which tends to appear increasingly in this period, the brain has been left in place. And as we cut through the body, you'll see that the brain highlighted in pink. And just to wrap it up, just a final mummy aminirt. Again, showing that the organs have been placed on top of the legs. And using this combination, I think, that works really well as communication, is combining the 3D modeling with the original DICOM slices, the X-ray slices, to provide this greater contrast to allow to highlight some of those features. And as I said, a lot of the findings, we found a lot of cardiovascular disease, these calcifications around the heart, but also the two circles at the top around the carotid artery. And so all these findings are feeding into academic publications. So I'm not the only one pushing my books, including just a few months ago, we published a book on the bioarchaeology of cardiovascular disease. So I hope you'll rush out and buy a copy. But I think reaching the academic audiences is one, but also being able to share this with diverse audiences is really key. And we've been exploring different ways, and we monitor the results. And we're hoping that in the future, like in the galleries upstairs, we'll be able to share the CT scans data in close proximity. This is in Valencia only a few weeks ago. And just my last slide, if you want to find out more about our research, but also our policy on human remains, do have a look at our research pages, as well as our pages dedicated to human remains. British Museum has an elaborate policy on human remains, and we're committed to curating human remains with care, respect, and dignity. We also strongly believe that some insights can only be gained through the display of human remains. Thank you.